ready.
Folks, good morning from Pipers'Persuasion. Our episode today, we welcomed Roddy McDonald, otherwise known as R.S. MacDonald, to explain that. A famous piper and composer who's well-travelled, starting from his family in Benbecula, Glasgow, London, Australia, and currently in Japan. He's entertained us with unique compositions and discs, books, concert and stage, and pipe bands. Welcome, Roddy. Today's
Good morning, Alan.
Today's the Tuesday, the 20th of May, 2025, 9 a.m. in Kilmarnock, UK, and 5 p.m., I think, in Osaka. Just before we start with Roddy, I'll give a shout out to Martin Lee, Nanny, Lindsay, and Maud, all in Japan, who asked me to do this recording, and they wanted to highlight the piping in Japan. So here we are, folks, and welcome to you, Roddy, once again. Could you just kick off, Roddy? Where are you from? Where were you born? Where's the family home? That sort of thing.
Well, actually, I was brought up in Inverness. I went to school in Inverness, spent my life there from when I was probably 4 years old. I was born in Glasgow in Stobhill Hospital, as was my father and my grandfather. We were all born there, but none of us, well, my father and I didn't actually live in Glasgow. My grandfather did after he came out of the army. My father's from Benbecula, as is my grandfather. So that's the Benbecula roots.
Did you ever stay in Benbecula?
No, never.
Okay.
Last time I was in Benbecula was in about 1975. It's a while.
My goodness, it is that. Aye. Have you been round the Highlands much at all in your life?
Oh yes. Well, I was brought up in the Highlands, and of course, in these days, unlike today, all the top players went to practically every Highland Games there was. Spent the summertime going around the games because it was a nice bonus to their salaries they were earning, getting money around the games, and the camaraderie was great. And my father had a little dormobile van, so we travelled from 10 years old. I remember travelling around with my sister around my mother, all the games, and sleeping in the van or bed and breakfasts and meeting all the old pipers.
What was your favourite games, would you say? The ones that
I like the games like Arasig out in the West Coast. Yeah, for small Highland games.
Overlooking the Silver Sands or Morar and stuff like that. Eh?
That's it. And I also like going up north, up to Caithness and these areas. That's nice. Dunbeath Highland Games.
Aye. But Hallkirk, did you ever do Hallkirk?
Did Hallkirk. In fact, it would have been about 1976, probably, when Pipe Major Ian Duncan, his brother Gordon, who wasn't really playing at that time, he was very young, a guy called Jim Mingus, who plays with the Atholl Highlanders, and Ian's first wife, Noel, at the time, and an athlete called Gordon Cruikshanks. We travelled round in Ian's father's Volkswagen Dormobile van for about 3 or 4 weeks, doing all the games out to Uist and everywhere. It was a pretty great experience.
How did you like South Uist Games, Roddy?
I liked South Uist and North Uist Games, both.
Aye. They were quite different, though, weren't they, the character of both these games?
I honestly don't remember anything different. We went to so many different games everywhere during that.
I remember the Glasgow Police played at the South Uist Games, the North Uist Games, and then in the Thursday, the Tobermory Games. That was way back 69, 70. And it was lashing the rain as usual, South Uist, and it was a nice day in North Uist, you know.
Of course, you had so many personnel in the Glasgow Police Band at that time who came from that part of the world. So,
and Yeah, Hashish Angus McDonald. He was from North Uist. That was
That's right.
the pipe major, and Ronnie Laurie. I don't. He was from Oban, of course, but John McCormick, Barra, Angus McLaren. I think had relatives in South Uist. Some description on that. But
Right.
you're always very welcome there. But it was quite a unique thing playing out in the Macher at South Uist.
Hmm.
Always a good turnout of good pipers too. Aye. So,
That was good fun.
aye, did you ever do Braemar?
Once or twice.
Aye, that's
Um,
totally different again. Aye.
I got to remember, my competing career was quite short. I
Aye,
moved
but
to
even as
London
a
when I
family,
was.
just to go there and all that sort of stuff. Aye. So, who was competing when you were wee and going round the games? Was it your father or
Oh,
who was
gracious me. My father was competing, Willie McDonald Inverness, Pipe Major Angus, John Burgess, Arthur Gillis, Big Jimmy McGregor.
it? Aye.
It's just so many. I'd be here all day.
And not all wonderful pipers, all different bagpipes, all different styles, eh?
And all great characters, all of them.
Aye,
One.
absolutely. Aye. And I understand that John Burgess, you took quite a lot from your association with John Burgess or whatever.
Well, I always looked up to him, and I think lots of people in my age group did the same way as young guys now look up to Gordon Duncan.
Aye.
John was the great orator, raconteur, piper, entertainer,
Aye.
everything. I really relished. And when I was in the Inver Gordon band, I lived not far away from him, and I used to see him quite regularly. So
I always got on well with John.
and I had the road I lived in. It's called Avron Road, I think the name of it was, and Perrins Road was the road at the back of it, and Pipe Major Bob Hill, lived there. He joined Scots Guards, and then he was prisoner of war.
Mm-hmm.
He became Pipe Major of the Guyland Southern Highlanders,
Aye.
and was the caretaker at the old Brompton Road drill hall. And everybody used to go there for a party after the London competition back in the 60s and 70s.
Aye. So, who taught you then?
Initially, my father started me off when I was about 10 years old, but as usual, I was trying to tell him I knew more about it than he did. And, and so I sort of didn't progress that well. Now, we used to have students stay with us in the summertime. My father's uncle on his mother's side, John McDonald, was the caretaker at Culloden Battlefield. It wasn't the big visitor centre thing it is now. It was just the tiny little cottage. And he'd have university students help out there in the summertime. And we had two stay with us. One was David Taylor from Kingussie, and who taught Martin Bennett. And both were pipers, and they would have sessions with my father. And the other was Hamish Moore, who needs no.
Yes.
Yeah. And of course, David was getting better and better, and I realised that I was sort of falling behind. So I joined the Boys Brigade pipe band. I was taught mainly. My early tuition was from a man called John Hunter, who was at the Battle of the Somme, Cameron Highlander. So lovely man.
Aye. Quite a few years with him, Roddy.
Oh, well, it would have been 3 or 4 years or something.
Okay.
To be perfectly honest, I can't actually remember.
And then after that, what happened?
Oh, well, my father was teaching me on and off. At the very beginning, when I was learning scales and grace notes, my father was learning reed making from John McClellan's father, Willie. And we used to go to his place in, I think it was Lentron. I can't remember now. I remember at the bottom of the road, Riddle, the fiddle player, used to live there.
Aye.
And used to go up there and I'd have a few tunes with, just on the practice chanter, very basic stuff. And he had a son, Roderick, who lived with him. And of course, John, famous John, the man at the castle. And there was another brother, Willie, and he was a police officer in the, like yourself, in the north of England somewhere. Remember meeting him on one occasion.
Aye.
Of course, I'm good friends with Colin.
And then you come across John McClellan later on in Edinburgh for Pembroke, etc.
I went for some lessons with him, probably about 4 or 5 times, not much more than that. And that's really all the tuition I've had. I'm pretty much a little bit like my father in many ways, but pretty much self-taught. So
it's amazing the people I've spoken to over the years. John Walsh, for instance, almost self-taught as well, and you get amazed, and then you turn around and say, "Well, most of us have been puddling about for years, and just picking up stuff." Nor is it. I'm really interested, though. You play very, very. Your finger technique is very, very clean and accurate. How did you accomplish that?
Well, that's thank you for that. That's a nice compliment. No, I don't know. When I practice, I practice for days on end and don't stop. And then at the moment, I can go months without playing at all. Because I'm in a place that's not surrounded by it, and I've got other interests in life outside competition piping.
And I don't know many times I've had this conversation, even recently with pipers, and say, when the last time you left your instrument? Not since the last time I competed. This is the sort of thing, well, you need to get back into it again. And of course, other folks saying to me, so it could be a lot better if we practiced constantly and all this. That you get this conversation all the time with pipers, don't you?
Well, Alan, I did it for 15 years for a living. Playing 5 days a week. And it tends to sort of wear you out a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. To get back now, that's still interesting, and it will be interesting when folk listen to your disc, how clean the fingers are. You're blessed with that. So you discussed the famous pipers that came to the house, and but another thing we never covered is you play your pipes in the right shoulder.
That's right. Same as my father. That's almost certainly how I picked it up.
Yeah.
My father played on the right shoulder,
and
he was taught by John Ban McCormick, who played on the right shoulder. Also, he had lessons from him.
It's kind of common out in South US and Barra and out the US and that sort of thing. But as you discussed off record, and that was just the way things were done for a while. And as historically, you could go into it, but we had quite a few pipers, as I said, played pipes in the right shoulder in the police band about 10, 15 years ago. There was 6 or 8 of them at one point. Pipe bands in Scotland.
And then I moved up to Invergordon Distillery pipe band with Jimmy Jackson. He was the pipe major there. And we still had Kip Reynolds in the band at that time, and his son, Graham. And then I moved down to British Caledonian Airways. I started playing with them.
That was at London.
Yeah, I was with them probably about 12 years.
So did you work down in London?
Yes, I did. I moved. When I joined them, I was working in Perthshire up in Scotland, in Mursley. And then I moved down to London, and I was working in London. And I stayed in London for well over 20 years. So.
And that's been the experience. So with B. Cal, who was in the B. Cal pipe band?
Oh, gracious me. There was Brian McCrae, the Sovereign's piper, pipe major Angus McDonald, Tony McDonald, Alan McDonald, Roddy McDonald, and
Dr. Angus was there as well, wasn't he?
played for a while, and so did Alan. Yes, there were
Yeah.
plenty of McDonalds in the band. Willie Beveridge.
Aye.
Just so many I can't remember. And then we had guest players. Kenny McDonald would guest, and Donald McPherson came a couple of times. And John Finlay, I couldn't remember his name. We were chatting.
John Finlay. Aye, that's right. Aye.
Finlay,
But so I understand it quite a number, and 2 or 3 or a group or a whole band would go all over the world with
That's right.
Advertiser wares. Where did you go with them personally?
Oh, Africa, South America, the States, Europe, all over the place.
And when you did that, what were you doing? Were you parading or playing at dinners, or what were you doing?
We'd play at St Andrews dinners. We'd play at parade. We did a big parade, and in my time, we did one in Houston and Texas. And I remember I was opening a cold storage unit on, let's say, the Tuesday in somewhere in France, and then the next day I was in Freetown in West Africa, and so they're going from one extreme to the other. And it was great fun because you go to Freetown and there was only one flight a week, so you stayed in the hotel the whole week.
Aye.
And, it was quite amazing. Do you remember Finlay McNeil?
Yes, I do actually.
I was there, and I was looking at the names on the Caledonian Society presidents, former presidents, and here Finlay's name's there, and he had been working out there in the education department, and he was the president of the Caledonian Society that particular year. Would have been in the 60s or something like that. Yeah.
He taught me ever so briefly at College of Piping. It was
right.
I'm sure. And memory stretching a wee bit, but I think he taught at Bellhouston Academy in Glasgow.
I don't know. I know he's a very good Gaelic singer, of course.
And and he won the gold medal, didn't he? Singing.
I'm not sure.
I think he did. Anyway, he's a father-in-law to James McPhee.
Right. Okay.
And I taught James McPhee from scratch.
Okay.
And James's son, young Angus, is doing very, very well currently, prize-wise.
James is up in Inverness now.
Aye, that's
and
right.
I remember his father very well.
Aye. Well, I saw the father just a couple of weeks ago at one of the last solo piping competitions. You know, it's still in the go yet.
Oh, that's
good. They were in East Kilbride originally. That's where I come across them. The big gang along at my house and all that. So
I think his father's from Uist or somewhere like that.
Aye, South Uist. Aye.
South Uist.
Aye. And they knew the Morrisons, Ronnie and old Fred and all the rest.
Yeah.
Aye. It's quite a tight community, you know, when you think about it. Did you ever come across the Morrisons yourself?
Yes, and I've met, Fred Jr.'s father, Fred Sr.
Aye.
And Roddy Morrison, lots of times when I was younger.
Aye.
Of course, I know Fred very well. I was with Fred last year. Would it be last year? Maybe, yes, at Winter Storm out in Kansas City. So.
Aye. He's a hell of a character. He's a nice guy, you know, some player as well.
Oh, yes, of course. And he's a great entertainer also.
Oh, aye. So that it's wonderful you come across all these people, really. When did you start composing, Roddy?
When I was about 16 or 17 years old.
Okay.
Just little bits here and there. So I've been composing for a good over 50 years. Yeah.
Aye. What did you start off with? Was it hornpipes or marches, or was it?
No, actually, it's quite funny. I wish I had my Shanta here. I started off writing. My father had some. Remember the old LPs, and he had one of these things, big piece of furniture that you lift the lid up and you play the things. And he was a great fan of Enrico Caruso, the opera singer, And there was one particular piece he was singing, and I sort of stole a little bit of the melody of it, and I wrote the bones of a pibroch back when I was 16, just sort of the first line, and I've just finished it now.
I was going to come on to that project, but you might as well finish that story, and then we can hark back to your other compositions and take it from there. What's happening about the pibroch then?
Well, currently I've been sort of hiding away for the last 4-5 years. I've been working on a number of pibroch compositions. You would have heard sort of one that I wrote. I wrote one for my best friend and lifelong friend in piping, Ian Duncan.
Yeah.
And I wrote during COVID, it was actually, and I wrote a tune for him, Lament for Alex McDonald and Alex Duncan. Sorry, my apologies. And John Dew played it at the Glenfiddich as a tribute.
I remember that well, and he played at the end of the competition while the judges were out, sort of thing. And he played exceedingly well, the fabulous instrument that day, and played a very, very good tune. I was very, very impressed with the whole thing, yes.
I was, and I am extremely grateful to him because he learned it in a very, very short period of time. There was no audience, and the only people there really were Ian and Chris and the family. So it would have been a very difficult thing for him to perform. So.
But he did a marvellous job. He certainly did it justice, that's for sure. Okay, I tried to ask you, but he brought out a disc called The Good Drying.
That's right.
And that's about 20 years ago, give or take a few years.
I would think 25. Yes, 22 years ago.
And Good Drying was the name of, I think it was a second track or something like that. And you've got the last tango in Harris, El Paco Grande. Talk to me about these tunes for a couple of minutes, time signature, etc.
Well, the names are all El Paco Grande. I got the idea of an album by I've forgotten the name now. And I'll come back to that in a second. Good Drying was just a bit of a laugh we had at home because when you hang your washing outside, the neighbour would come in to say to my mother, that was the level of conversation. It's a marvellous day for drying today, Mrs. McDonald, isn't it? That was something I remember. So just a bit of tongue-in-cheek fun. And Last Tango in Harris, I got the name actually from a guy called Les Sang, who's a drummer. He used to play in the Glasgow Sky, and he used to always tell me a story about I think it was the Ashoka Indian restaurant. Some guy in Stornoway used to get takeaways sent up on the plane, and Leslie's wee joke was about because he had no mango chutney, so it was the last mango in Harris. So I just changed the name back to how the original film Last Tango in Paris. That was it. El Paco Grande. Gloria Estefan, that was the name of the girl. She has an album called Mi Tierra, which is all South American music, and I got the rhythm idea from that. So. And then the Vale played it first, of course, the Vale.
And did a marvellous job. I saw the first time I heard that they did a concert down in Manchester for Owen Nash. And they had this first time Owen had a pipe band as opposed to his normal solo piping. And they had these concerts twice a year. And they turned up and they stayed out all night and was still partying till dawn the next morning after the concert and all this. It was a whale of a night.
I bet most of them can't do that now.
I don't think so. But that was the highlight of the evening, that particular track. What's the time signature in that, Roddy?
I think it's a 12/8.
Aye. Did you do quite a lot of the 12/8s? What?
I never think about it when I write. I never think about what time signatures it is or anything. So I'm not a pen person. In
So
fact,
it's just somebody else's problem then.
my music theory is probably grade 1 primary school. Of course, now we didn't have the same opportunity when I was young as people do now, going to the Conservatorium of Music and learning orchestration and everything. We didn't have that. We didn't have that opportunity. Of course, some people played other instruments, played piano. Donald McPherson, of course, was a good pianist.
Aye.
And people play other instruments, yeah.
So we're doing fine. Did you bring out any other disc?
No, 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 I haven't.
So
and
a book collection.
What I was working on, it just became too expensive. To do an album with orchestra.
And you did that down in Australia, didn't you?
I've written quite a lot for military band and for orchestra, but I can't orchestrate. I have an orchestrator, a guy called Graham Lloyd, who's really fabulous. So yeah.
So I missed that for a wee second. The CD you played, I understand the Great Highland Bagpipe as opposed to any other electronic instrument, and that must have been rather difficult. But you were aided by a Blair, huh?
I think now if I was to record anything, I would use the Blair digital chanter, because it's all about the music when you're recording it, particularly when you've got orchestration and arrangements with it. I know that lots of people now are using it for recording, so it's a wonderful.
But at that time, you used a normal.
Just at that time, there was no Blair at that time. That was in 2001 when we recorded it, and the Blair, the prototype. Murray came up to see me from Melbourne, where he lives, up to Brisbane, where I was. Little surprise in his bag, and pulled out this mess of stuff, and that was the baby of the prototype of the Blair, and it just blew me away. I just couldn't believe it. It sounded just like a bagpipe. It's just the greatest. It's the only digital bagpipe out there. Of course, all the others are electronic, and digital being that the sounds in it are sampled from the actual instruments rather than electronically created. But I'm not the one who's technically minded. That's Murray Blair.
Harking back to the good drying disc again, you recorded the tracks using your normal bagpipe. I understand it was a nail bagpipe, which we can go on in a second. But you led me to believe also that all the background and everything else, Blair put that on after you gave him the tracks.
I'd spent a few that I was living in Japan. I flew across and did the tracks, laid the tracks down, and we had to discard some. Some never made it. For what I left that for Murray to decide what would be on and not on. I think that's best. That's the producer's job. And Murray did all the arrangements, all the backing, everything on it. It's a Murray Blair production. So.
It's amazing that the Bullet Train comes on first, and of course, as a Japanese people.
That's my son when he's a little boy, standing on the track for the Bullet Train, standing on the track talking. So I just recorded him there, and he's probably at that time. It would have been 2009. He would have been 5 or 6 years old at that time.
Goodness sake. And then you had the singers there as well.
That Murray organised all that.
Aye, fantastic, really. He did a brilliant job on it. And he obviously just got the balance of the pipes and everything else just perfect. You know, it's
Well, he does a very good job with everything. That's why the bands use him for concerts, and that's why they now at Winter Storm in Kansas City he produces he's the concert director there. So
fantastic.
Yes.
So I mentioned your bagpipe a second ago. We never covered your father's bagpipe and your bagpipe. Do you want to discuss that for a second?
Well, I don't know what my father's bagpipe is. Actually, it's my father's bagpipe from Scotland. Ian Duncan keeps it for me. He bought them on a troop ship going to Palestine in 1946. He was stationed in Palestine with the HLI, Highland Light Infantry, between 1946 and 49. And I don't know if he did it when he was there or when he came back, but the silver on them is not the original silver. He'd scrape down the wood on it and put if you take the slides off, all the wood underneath has been scraped with just a knife. And so I'm having them slightly refurbished shortly, and Ian's going to help me with that. And I'm going to have a little plaque put on them just to say who they belong to. And then I'm not sure what's going to happen with them. I'll discuss it with my son. My son can play but doesn't. He's very busy with his job in London. So I would like him to have them, but I would also like them to be played. So we may, but what I'll discuss with him is giving them on sort of permanent loan to somebody.
Aye. Because a good instrument, and I assume that it is a good instrument.
Yes.
What drones were they?
Well, that's what I don't know. I'd need to get someone who's an expert on it to look at it. They're either lorries or a Henderson's. I suspect we've suspected they're probably a lorry bagpipe. They're a good bagpipe. We won both gold medals in the clasp on it. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
So it was a great piper, your father, then, doing all these sorts. What was his what was it? How was he known? What was it called?
Oh, my father's nickname was the Mooch.
Aye. Okay.
And that was his grandfather's nickname. He got the name handed down from his father, and that was my grandfather's nickname. And of course, Pipe Major Honest MacDonald used to call me the Mini Mooch.
Aye.
And then when my son was born, he came to the house to see my son when he was a baby, and he christened him the Micro Mooch. You know, he always had that high-pitched voice. Oh, look, that's the Micro Mooch. He was a great man.
Who styled J.R. S MacDonald then?
Oh, that was Willie McDonald in Inverness.
Aye.
The other Willie McDonald, who was he was in the Cameron Highlanders. He won I think he won both gold medals the same year. And
was that the one that was called Watery Willie?
That's right, because he's an engineer with the water board in Inverness.
I thought he was streaming eyes or something, you know.
He's a lovely guy, and he had a beautiful house, sort of risen up in Fairfield Road in Inverness, just along from when we moved to Inverness at first. Before my parents bought a house, they lived in Army Housing, which was in Fairfield Road in Inverness. There was another piper there who's an art teacher, McPhee, also lived just 2 doors along. So I'd see Willie often. When we bought a house, we moved to a place called Muirton Street. And it's interesting, when you walk from Willie McDonald Inverness's house to William McDonald Benbecula's house, you'd always pass John McDonald's house. Percival Road. 3 Percival Road.
Aye. So that was the John McDonald, eh?
I never met him. But I met his housekeeper. His housekeeper used to go and see my father visit my parents quite regularly.
Aye. So there's a lot of history in these neighbouring streets, eh? A wee change of pace here. Australia, Queensland Police, the Pipe Major, any comment about that? what kind of band it was, etc.?
I went there in 2003 February. I was there for 15 years. I'm the longest continuous serving pipe major of the full-time pipe major of the Queensland Police. I had an interesting time there. We did a lot of stuff. Travelled a lot in Queensland. Travelled to Japan. Travelled to Edinburgh, and interstate. But our main job there was, you know what it's like in policing. It's about supporting the community and building that relationship between police. Because most people come across police when they get a parking ticket or they get a speeding ticket. So it's nice when we used to go out and do some bridge building with the community. That's the whole purpose of the Queensland Police Pipes and Drums.
That's amazing, because I did an episode with the RCMP, and they've got 9 bands, 8 or 9 bands through Canada, and they have their own association, and they are all community bands. They do not compete. They go out and do exactly the job that you've just stated that the Queensland Police Pipe Band did. Just go meet the community, let the people see what they're paying for, entertain them, and put a wee bit of light and a wee bit of happiness into their life, that sort of thing, and just generally put yourself about and be nice to people, and give them a nice day and that sort of thing. And it's very, very, very good for the public relations, police public relations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have there's 5 police bands in Australia, pipe bands, and I hope I haven't got this wrong. And there's one. South Australia has a brass or military style band, and not pipes. Western Australia, Queensland, and Victoria. Nat Russell's ex.
Yeah.
He's retired from there, and they are full time. And then Tasmanian Police and New South Wales Police are just a voluntary. Not just, they're a voluntary group that do a great job also, yeah.
Did you come across Sam Young at all?
Yes, I know Sam very well. Extremely well.
I did an episode, very recent episode with Sam, and very, very good. Nice chap.
I met his father also, lived up in North Queensland, so.
He's an interesting guy when you talk to him about instruments and reeds and one thing and another, very, very good indeed. So that was Australia, the Queensland Police. Just before I go to Japan, what orchestras do you play with or have played with? What pieces did you compose for that, Roddy?
Played with the Queensland Symphony Orchestra, and at that time the sort of manager or director of the orchestra was a guy called Patrick Pickett, and he'd been director of music for the Australian Army Band. But actually, I joined the army in I can't see it's up there somewhere on my wall. I was commissioned into the Australian Army as a captain, and in the Australian Army Band Corps, but I also worked with the infantry, Royal Australian Regiment, 8-9 Battalion with the pipes and drums there. And of course, I had to retire from there when I reached a certain age. And so Patrick was the director of music when I joined initially, and then he moved across to he left the army and moved into symphony orchestra work. And so I was working with the Queensland Symphony Orchestra, and then he bought the Queensland Pops Orchestra, and I worked with them also. So I wrote with the Queensland Symphony Orchestra. I was commissioned to write a piece called The Fallen for them, which we recorded with the Red Hot Chili Pipers as a charity album for 9/11 and for the Scottish Firefighters, Widows and Orphans Fund. So they managed all that side of it, and I think it did well. It's got about just under 5 million views on Facebook. And then I've got another piece I wrote for With Honour We Serve. That was for military band orchestra. Done it with both. It's been orchestrated for orchestra and military band. Cradle Mountain's my major piece that I've got, and I recorded that with the Queensland Police Orchestra.
That's a lot of work there over the years,
I really like doing that. I find it very interesting. And the
What
great
kind of
thing
audiences did you get for these things? Did you get a decent sized audience, or what? Who were you playing?
With Honour We Serve was played when the Edinburgh Tattoo came to Australia, so it's pretty much sold out.
Aye.
And the orchestras, have got great following. These things are pretty much sold out. So,
how did you get on with the conductor? I spoke to Eric Regler there, and he had not a difficult time, but he had to be fast on his toes the first time he ever played in front of a conductor in London. And it's a new experience.
Absolutely, because he would have been, I think he's a little bit younger than me, Eric, but we'll have been brought up the same way, where we're not used to playing with orchestras, and I had some pretty good guidance, and as long as you speak to the conductor first and you explain that you can't just and go like you can with a trumpet, that you have to bring the drones in and things like that. So but working with Patrick Pickett was very good, because he'd come from a pipe band background before he joined the army as a boy, so he knew exactly what was happening. So, and all the other conductors I've worked with, I've never had any. I always play down what I know. It's better that way. So you make a mistake, they don't crucify you.
But
I played here in Japan. I was playing last time I played here was a year ago. I played with the Kanazawa Symphony Orchestra. It's the major music festival, classical music festival here in Japan. So I was there last year.
And you introduced Japan into conversation. When did you move there, and why, and all that stuff?
This is my second time I've been here. I have a permanent resident visa here. I can stay for good. So piping here is sort of up and down a little bit. Doesn't seem to move on too much in this part of Japan. Atsushi Yamane, his father is the guy who did the tuner the Yamani tuner, his late father, should I say. He's the sort of stalwart of piping amongst the respected elder of piping here in Japan. He's a pipe major. I think he may have stepped down as pipe major of the Tokyo band and handed it on to one of the younger guys. I saw him twice. I saw him at Christmas time, and I saw him at the big St. Patrick's Day parade. They have a big St. Patrick's Day parade, and it's about 50,000 people come in Tokyo. It's a major event. And
do they have any competitions, Roddy?
Proper piping competitions? No.
And so that's fine. So it's more or less just concert stuff they're doing in parades if they've got a sizable band.
They'll do parades, and they'll do things like playing at department stores and.
Aye.
And that sort of stuff.
Do they have Highland Games at all?
Not anymore. There's one here. Sorry, I nearly forgot. There's Kansai. There used to be big games in Tokyo. That no longer happens. And there's a lady here, Maud Ramsey, and her daughter. They ran the Kansai Highland Games. So that was on last month, I think it was, or the month before.
Okay. So it's Maud has got a shout at last, so that's fine. She's doing great.
Yeah, she used to stay when she was a girl. She used to stay with the McDonald brothers, with the mother, Mrs. McDonald, and knew the father, the whaler. Angus Norman and Alan and Ian. Yes, so she knows the family, and so she knows that family very well.
I tell you, I spoke to Ian McDonald Nielsen, father of Finlay McDonald, the National Piping Centre, and Ian did quite a lot of work in Japan. They took pipers across over the years, and he was quite well known there. Did you ever come across him?
He was extremely well known here, and he was very, very well thought of here. And he was a wonderful, wonderful friend to me. And I'm going to tell you a very quick story about him. I was living in London, and I'd got a very big hernia, which pipers get, obviously. Yeah. And I was waiting to see a specialist in London for nearly a year. And I was up for the silver anniversary of the Lothian and Borders Police Pipe Band. Colin McClellan had it at that time. A big Donald McPhee was the guest player at the dinner. I remember that. And I was talking to Ian. I'd got quite friendly with Ian, and I said I had this problem. And he said, "Can you come and see me on Monday?" So I went through to he's an anaesthetist. So I went on Monday, and he introduced me to the surgeon. And I had the operation the next day. But wait till you hear this. I had not at that point met his wife, Anne. And after I came out of hospital, Anne and Ian put me up in their house, in their bedroom downstairs, until I was well enough to go back home.
And that was at Nielsen?
That was at the house in Nielsen.
I was in the house at Nielsen. Actually, I did a two-parter with him. One day, I did the interview, which was very, very good, because he was a great speaker, Yes. And then he took us in the next day to National Pipe Centre, and we had a big room down the stairs, and they laid out his full bagpipe collection, which we filmed and they discussed and all the rest. At the conclusion of which, the door opened and who burst in but McIntosh of America, and the Tayside, Jimmy McIntosh, and the two of them were giving away. And I said to Jimmy, I said, nice to meet you. I says, can I interview you? And it was across for his 90th birthday. So just a rolling thing, how these things happen. But no, Ian was wonderful. At Nielsen, the interview finished, and it took me up to the local pub, and we had a very nice lunch there,
Yes, I've been there a few times.
Aye.
Well, Ian and Anne are two of the most wonderful people I ever had the opportunity of going.
Aye.
It's a great memory. And I went with Ian and the Nielsen band out to Strakonica in the Czech Republic. That's another place where Ian had been going for many, many years.
Aye. He was all over the place, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah. He was a
And
great ambassador for Scotland.
aye, absolutely wonderful. And I said, who do you get to go to these places? You know, it's these students and retired folk, and it says just about anybody. And of course, not being a competing band or anything like that, it was looking for obviously half decent pipers, but you know, just folk and a wee thing. You're talking about composing tunes. Every time we went to a different country to learn a tune native to that country,
That's right.
aye, and they get the band to play it, and it says always do the trick.
Well, Ian and Jimmy Anderson were the earlier, but you know, they were in folk bands right at the beginning.
Yeah,
Playing folk pipes, so they were really the people who responsible for get. There would have been Ian, Jimmy Anderson, Robert Wallace. That was their little group at the beginning, you know, in the early 70s. So yeah. But you talk about Jimmy McIntosh there. Jimmy, I spoke to Jimmy online on the Facebook messengers a number of times before he passed away, and I was sending some music to him, some Pibroch compositions for some feedback. But Jimmy used to stay with my parents and the family when he competed at the Northern meetings. But I didn't really talk to him very much. I was very young, and it wasn't sort of a big conversation.
So that's wonderful. And you're still having a tune yet?
Oh yes, yeah. Still enjoying the tune.
What are you playing just now?
Well, I'm working on these Pibrochs and March to Spades and Reels. I'll be having a book coming out. Hopefully, if I get it finished. I'll be coming to Scotland to finish it because I can't get the adrenaline drive here, and be a set number of Pibrochs and March to Spades and Reels, and I'll be bringing a book out towards the end of next year. That'll be my final book. So just be a limited edition book. So yeah.
And you were talking about the Pibroch Society as well.
Well, I think once the book's out, the tunes, rather than just not being available, I will ask the president there probably to put, give them to the Pibroch Society to put on their website, and they can make a few shillings. So that's what we do.
That's excellent. Yeah. I was, you've done a lot of composing and all the rest of it. How about people sort of pinching your work and publishing it elsewhere and playing it elsewhere without you getting any attribution or money or anything for it? You get any thoughts on that?
Well, I don't think it's so much about it, unless it's something there is one thing that irks me, and that's people sharing Gordon Duncan's music. And the reason that irks me is because Gordon Duncan Memorial Trust, they have given away over £100,000 in sponsorship to young people in Scotland who are learning bagpipes and it's just such a great organisation, and I don't like people stealing money from it. That's maybe a horrible thing to say, but that's just a fact of life.
I know.
And I think it's, and if you play in an orchestra or if you're in the military, you have to buy each sheet of music. You don't, but it seems to be quite traditional that we just hand it out willy-nilly here and there. And a lot of people ask me for a tune. I just give it to them. Just ask me. That's the polite thing to do. You know, if you ask, if you ask someone, and
aye,
yeah,
and they give you the appropriate credit as due.
oh no, most people do. Most people do. It's there's one or two Facebook pages that they're sharing music on. It's just 99% of people are fine, you know, with it. It's like anything else. So yeah, but it's not something I think about much, to be perfectly honest, Alan.
It's quite funny because I put stuff up in YouTube and stuff that I've recorded from the likes of the McCallum Road Show, for instance. And I've filmed it, and I've edited it, and I've produced it on you know, and then I take a wee excerpt and I put it in one of these interviews, you know, as a background music. Somebody pinches it and then it claims it's theirs, and I'm getting done for breach of copyright for stuff that I've filmed.
But it's quite nice when you hear people play. I saw something on YouTube a few years ago, and it was a folk band in Moscow. Not playing the Great Highland Bagpipe, and they were playing Last Tango in Paris. And so I switched it on. I thought it's the feel good factor.
It's rather a backhanded nice compliment, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah, it's really good.
Roddy, we're just about done.
I have 20 seconds at the end of this conversation just to say something. I understand this is your last interview.
It is.
Well, I'd like to say on behalf of the whole piping community out there, a huge thank you. You've really created something quite historical. A number of people who you've interviewed are no longer with us, and there are no other interviews. And I'd like to thank you, and thank you on behalf of everyone in the piping world for the wonderful job you've done over how many years?
Oh, 15, I think. 2010.
Wonderful. Really wonderful. Thank you, Alan.
It's been a pleasure speaking to you and speaking to all the other kind people who have deigned to put themselves behind the camera and expose themselves, etc. And they provide very, very entertaining and historical interest. And it's been a good run. And I think it's about time to just bring it to an honourable end. Roddy, you've provided us with a great interview today, very little of any editing, and we've had a wee technical problems, but hey-ho, we've managed to get it done, and I thank you very much for your time. And I
thank you for
end the conversation at that, and if you remain on just for a second, thank you very much, Roddy.
Thank you.